Hello everyone, I hope you guys are doing well. There is something going on with Jared Kushner. He bought 666 Fifth Avenue in 2007 for a total of $1.8 billion. That was 3 times the asking price. So he definitely wanted this building. And this building, 666 Fifth Avenue, I kid you not, that's the name, you can't make this stuff up, is right across the street from the Rockefeller Center. I honestly thought this was fake when I first heard it, but when I started doing my research, it turned out to be true, and there is so much going on with this building, and when you go down this rabbit hole, you just have a hard time getting out. So Jared Kushner bought that building in 2007. At the same time, Lucid Technologies was working out of this building, which apparently has no affiliation with Jared Kushner at all, but is, of course, in 666 Fifth Avenue, was their headquarters on the 6th floor. So this Lucid Technology was working on the RFID chip at 666 Fifth Avenue. Kid you not. This is not a joke. How crazy is this? So this is all pretty crazy information, to say the least. You look at the logo for Lucid Technology. By the way, these are all the companies that are currently partnered together. You look at Lucid Technology's logo. At first glance, it looks like a simple circle. But it is actually an Ouroboros, which is a snake eating its own tail. And this is very, very common in occult symbolism. And of course, I had to research this and figure out if that was really what they were going for. And indeed, the person that created this logo was in fact going for the snake eating its own tail. Okay, so we have Lucid Technologies that was working out of 666 Fifth Avenue on the 6th floor. At the same time, Jared Kushner bought the building for 3 times the asking price. So that alone is crazy information. You can't make that stuff up. But then we go on even further, and recently, Lucid Technology was bought out by Nokia. So we all know who Nokia is. They bought this company for $16.6 billion. Their primary vision for this company is to make synthetic skin. So apparently, Lucid Technology was also in the business of creating fake skin and synthetic robotoids. So this is truly some crazy information. And like I said, I think we need to look into it more and continue to keep an eye on this. A lot of people are saying that Jared Kushner is the Antichrist. I honestly don't know. And I don't even know if he fits the whole narrative for the Antichrist. But I do think that this is significant information, and it is something that we should pay attention to. The elite have always put it in plain sight for us to see. We have just been too blinded. And until you actually open your eyes, you're not going to see this stuff. You're not going to research. They keep you distracted with entertainment and the latest technology and all the things that you don't need, and you're not able to see their plans, but they put this in plain sight, and as long as you're willing to do the research yourself, you can find this information out.
Honestly, I wish I had that power. I'd love to have that power.
Donald Trump is gushing again over Vladimir Putin.
If he says great things about me, I'm going to say great things about him.
Trump believes Putin called him brilliant a few months ago. Putin later said he only called Trump bright. But tonight, it's Trump's comments about the Russian president's leadership made to NBC News, which have brought serious fallout.
I mean, the man has very strong control over a country. Now, it's a very different system, and I don't happen to like the system. But certainly in that system, he's been a leader far more than our president has been a leader.
Putin, the man who invaded Ukraine, annexed Crimea, backs the brutal Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad, crushes those who oppose him inside Russia, and may well be responsible for the hack of the Democratic National Committee's computers. That Vladimir Putin, Trump says, outshines President Obama. Fresh meat for Hillary Clinton.
It is scary because it suggests he will let Putin do whatever Putin wants to do and then make excuses for him.
But Trump's embrace of Putin isn't just scaring Trump's rival.
I'm uncomfortable comparing the President of the United States to someone who's turned out to be a dictator.
Philip Mudd, a career intelligence analyst and executive at the CIA, FBI, and the White House National Security Council, is also troubled by Trump's declaration that he'd have a very good relationship with Putin.
In places like Europe, in places like Syria, in Iran, where America has critical policy interests, Putin has interests that are at variance. For example, in Syria, he supports the continuation of the Assad regime. The Americans obviously do not.
By contrast, experts say Putin believes Hillary Clinton will be more formidable.
Vladimir Putin would obviously prefer that Trump became president than Hillary Clinton, mostly because he really dislikes Hillary Clinton.
Some believe Putin, the former KGB officer, is manipulating Trump by stroking his ego. Former CIA Director Michael Morrell said this to ABC News.
Donald Trump didn't even understand, right, that Putin was playing him. So in Putin's mind, I have no doubt that Putin thinks that he's an unwitting agent of the Russian Federation, although Putin would never say that.
How might Putin manipulate Trump if Trump's elected?
I can imagine, at least in the early stages, Putin sort of getting Trump to believe everything that he says, by flattery, by taking Trump seriously, by complimenting him on his leadership ability, and then being a bad faith negotiator, which he always is.
But analyst Masha Gessen believes that if Trump wins the presidency, a dangerous confrontation between Trump and Putin is more likely. She calls it, quote, two mentally unstable, aggressive men with nuclear buttons. We reached out to the Trump campaign. They wouldn't respond directly to that or to the other criticisms of Trump's compliments of Vladimir Putin. Trump himself has said that Putin's compliments of him would have, quote, zero impact on their relationship.
Up and fight the right revolution. Are you ready to stand up and fight it just like soldiers? Many are called, few are chosen. Whichever way the wind blows, whichever the way the wind blows, tells me to go, and it holds back the wind if it's overpowering, overpowering, overpowering. Whichever way the wind blows, whichever the way the wind blows, tells me to go, and it holds back the wind if it's overpowering, overpowering, I'll go wherever it takes me, and I don't care about Satan sees, they can all hate me. And I stand up in a lucky shy inauguration. He's patiently waiting, and he's gonna.
Political priority over the next 2 years should be to deny President Obama a second term.
If we're able to stop Obama on this, it will be his Waterloo. It will break him. One of your quotes from last year, where you said, quote, the single most important thing we want to achieve is for President Obama to be a one-term president. So how do you respond to those Democratic lines of attack?
Well, that is true. That's my single most important political goal, along with every active Republican in the country.
The people, my people are so smart. And you know what else they say about my people? The polls. They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
The next time time we see him, we might have to kill him. We've had a couple that were really violent, and the particular one, when I said, like to bang him, like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
Do you believe that you've done anything to create a tone where this kind of violence would be encouraged?
We have some protesters who are bad dudes. Get them out! Get them out! The audience swung back, and I thought it was very, very appropriate. You see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously. The audience hit back. That's what we need, a little bit more of. 68% would not leave under any circumstances. I think that means murder. I think it means anything.
Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
68% would not leave under any circumstances. I think that means murder. I think it means anything. I stepped 18 inches out of the pen and he grabbed me by the neck and started choking me and he slammed me to the ground. I got hit and now I'm on the ground getting detained by the police. The next time we see him, we might have to kill him. Throw him out. Throw him out into the cold. Maybe he should have been roughed up. Just knock the hell. Get him out of here. Don't give him the coat. Don't coach. I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people will. Get out! 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 Isn't it great to be at a Trump rally, really? Get out of here. Get out. Out! All right, yeah, get him out. Try not to hurt him. If you do, I'll defend you in court. Don't worry about it. You know, one of the things that happened, he wasn't bad, but some of these protesters are really violent people. Now, if we're tough with them, we get criticized. We had one guy in New Hampshire, actually, who was a rough guy, and he was swinging and punching, and he was really going down for the count. And we had a couple of people in the audience who were equally rough, and they took him out. They took him out. No, they took him out, and I'll tell you what, it was really amazing to watch. And, you know, this was a seriously tough cookie. A guy looked like an NFL football player. We had four guys, they jumped on him, they were swinging and swinging. The next day we got killed in the press. And we were too rough. Give me a break. You know, right? We don't want to be too politically correct anymore, right, folks? So, our country's going to hell. All right.
It's just a total deflection, this whole thing with Russia. By the way, if they hacked, they probably have her 33,000 emails. I hope they do. They probably have her 33,000 emails that she lost and deleted, because you'd see some beauties there. So let's see. Honestly, I wish I had that power. I'd love to have that power. But it shows how weak we are. It shows how disrespected we are. A total sign, assuming it's Russia or China or one of the major countries and competitors. Wouldn't it be nice if we actually got along, as an example, with Russia? I'm all for it.
Thing that a lot of people are talking about this week is potential conflict of interest. Trump Organization has many businesses. It has, units all over the world. But he's recently asked that his kids get top security clearances. What do you think? Is the organization going to be able to avoid the appearance of conflicts of interest over the next 4 years?
Absolutely not. He's putting the government in
The Wall Street Journal did some pretty good investigative reporting into Donald Trump's finances and businesses throughout the world and how it could serve as a little bit of a problem once he is commander-in-chief. Now, Donald Trump in the past had noted that he is about $315 million in debt due to all of his businesses. However, according to this investigation, the Wall Street Journal found that he actually owes an additional $1.5 billion to companies that are partly owned by the billionaire. Now, what does it mean that he's partly owner or part owner of these companies? That means that he owns at least 30% of these companies. And so as a result, they determined that he actually owes $1.8 billion to various financial organizations throughout the world because of his businesses. Now, Lawrence Noble, a former lawyer of the Federal Election Commission, said, "The appearance of potential conflicts is dangerous and seriously exists in this situation." So what does that mean? Look, if you are the leader of the United States and you're dealing with, let's say, a bank like Wells Fargo, and the government is currently investigating Wells Fargo for, I don't know, opening up millions of bank accounts without letting the consumers know, well, what is the president likely to do if he owes money to that bank? He's likely to, I don't know, maybe brush it under the rug, maybe give him a pass.
Especially if he gets a deal from Wells Fargo. That's why we got to know. So that's why Trump saying conflict of interest doesn't matter is preposterous. It's never mattered more than now. And I want to be clear. It doesn't mean that Trump is down $1.8 billion in his life. He has borrowed that money, but he has other assets. And so you might borrow some money, in your case, maybe to buy a house or to buy a car. In his case, to buy real estate, property, buildings, golf courses. Now, you can make more money off of that property, but still have that loan that's outstanding, whether it's a business completely owned by you or at least a minority share in a business. But think about this. One other, I mean, there's 150 institutions that he owes money to, with a lot of different business dealings where he could catch a break if they caught a break. Now, some of them are American companies like Wells Fargo that are already under investigation. Then there's the big banks like JP Morgan, BlackRock, Deutsche Bank, which is, of course, a foreign bank, and Prudential. But there's also the Bank of China. So now, look, luckily he's already very antagonistic with China. I don't know that that's a lucky thing. But so far, to be fair, he has not shown any conflict of interest with China.
Right.
But, you know, I don't want you to cross your fingers too hard, right? I mean, let's see what happens here as it goes. But what we do need to do is to have some degree of accountability here. Now, what other presidents would do and have all done is put all their assets in a blind trust so they don't know if they owe money to or have assets in Bank of China, Deutsche Bank. They don't know if they should be, you know, lean in favor of the Germans or the Chinese or whoever else. But Trump won't do that. He absolutely refused to do that. So then we need even more accountability to make sure that he's not cheating on his own behalf and against the interests of the American people.
I feel like at this point it would be unavoidable for him to cheat and do things in his best interest, even if he put these businesses in some sort of, or accounts into some sort of blind trust. I mean, he knows that these are his businesses at the end of the day, right? And so another thing to keep in mind is, okay, maybe he wants good deals for himself and his own businesses, maybe better interest rates for the you know, loans that he's going to get or did get in the past, but also regulation, right? One of the things that was a selling point for the anti-establishment candidates during the election, whether it be Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders, both very different, was, okay, well, Wall Street, they're running amok. We need to do something. We can't elect someone like Crooked Hillary because they're in her pocket, right? Well, you think he's going to go for stricter regulations of, you know, banks or organizations that he wants favors from?
So here's how one thing could play out. It hasn't played out this way yet. But so he knows that a company that he's partnered with has a giant debt that they owe together to the Bank of China. He says, hey, China, I don't know, maybe I don't agree with your one China policy, and maybe I want to have a relationship with Taiwan. And then the Bank of China goes, you know what, not with Trump, but with the majority stakeholder of that loan, maybe I knock down your interest rate by 2%. Or I do some other condition that is favorable to you by millions, maybe billions of dollars, right? And then Trump goes, well, look at that. It turns out one China policy does make sense. Don't worry about Taiwan. Hey, did I negotiate? Was I making a deal? Was that the art of a deal? I don't know. I guess you'll never find out. So this is deeply problematic. So let's see how it plays out. But it is so important that the media keep an eye on this because there is a lot of self-dealing that could happen here.
Kellyanne Conway is now coming to the defense of Ivanka Trump after Nordstrom and other major retailers dropped the first daughter's fashion line.
Go buy Ivanka's stuff is what I would tell you. I hate shopping. I'm going to go get some on myself today.
Conway urged Americans to buy Ivanka's products. Live from the White House briefing room on Fox and Friends.
It's a wonderful line. I own some of it. I'm going to give a free commercial here. Go buy it today, everybody. You can find it online.
Now some are saying Kellyanne Conway's public endorsement may have violated a government ethics law.
You don't use public office for the private game of another.
Whether it's, to the letter of the law, illegal or not, it certainly seems wrong and inappropriate for her to be doing that.
White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer.
Do you believe that she crossed an ethical line?
Kellyanne has been counseled, and that's all we're going to go with.
President Trump sparked the controversy by tweeting, "My daughter Ivanka has been treated so unfairly by Nordstrom." Nordstrom is standing by its decision, declaring sales of the brand have steadily declined to the point where it didn't make good business sense for us to continue with the line for now. Other stores are still carrying Ivanka Trump fashion, as I found out when I went to this Century 21 store in New York City.
Check out this huge selection of handbags. This one here retails for about $295 and it's on sale for $149. Check out all these Ivanka shoes that we found at Century 21. They're all on clearance. They're only $24.
White House advisor Kellyanne Conway went toe-to-toe today with my next guest, and things got lively, as they always do, with Mr. Michael Wolff, the columnist for The Hollywood Reporter. Good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us, and he's in D.C. tonight because that's where the story is right now, he says. So, Michael, you interviewed Kellyanne Conway today at this forum about the press and the presidency, and you asked her about what the media thinks of the Trump administration, mentioning the Washington Post's new slogan, "Democracy dies in darkness." Let's play a moment, and then we'll discuss.
How personal do you take this?
How personally do I take what?
What the this coverage of you, democracy dies in darkness, because I'm going to tell you, when they say democracy dies in darkness, you're the darkness.
In the age of Trump, they've now given themselves a new tagline, "Democracy dies in dark." And it also sends a clear signal. The Washington Post thinks the Trump administration represents darkness. Democracy dies in darkness. That's a tagline that you put on when Donald Trump becomes president. I would say, yeah.
One of Donald Trump's top aides promoted his daughter Ivanka's clothing and jewelry line just a day after Trump tweeted in criticism of Nordstrom dropping her product line. Senior advisor Kellyanne Conway said simply, "Go buy Ivanka's stuff," during a Fox News interview this week. Nordstrom shares dropped after these tweets, but the decision prompted a lot of discussion from ethics officials who served on previous Republican and Democratic administrations, saying Trump's reaction was unprecedented and worrying. Nordstrom has stood by its decision to drop Ivanka's products.
Donald Trump just received jaw-dropping news about his re-election fund for 2020. Kim Smith at the Conservative Tribune reports not even 3 months into his first year in the White House, President Donald Trump's 2020 re-election campaign is getting some very good news that will have liberals everywhere troubled. According to the Quarterly Federal Election Commission, documents that were filed on Friday, Trump's 3 campaign committees, Donald J. Trump for President, Trump Victory and Trump Make America Great Again committee raised a record of $13.2 million in the first 3 months of 2017, according to the New York Post. They say the committees also finished March with nearly $16 million in the bank. Nearly 80% of the funds raised came from small donors, according to Politico. They write here that some $4.7 million of the money came from Trump's Make America Great memorabilia, which included hats, T-shirts, mugs, and stickers. The campaign reportedly spent at least $2.7 million on telemarketing and other fundraising activities, according to the documents. They state here Trump's re-election campaign slogan, "Keep America Great." Make America Great Again to keep America great. So very good news for Team Trump, considering 2017 isn't even half over. If the funds continue to increase at this pace, there's no telling how much money Trump will raise by the next election cycle.
New York Times story on Donald Trump's taxes has had, but it did ask voters about Trump's tax returns. What did they say?
It did. It showed that taxes are certainly on the mind of voters. And let's take a look at this. That is why the New York Times story that broke this weekend is so important. More than 7 in 10 voters want Trump to release his taxes. And in our poll, it shows that nearly 1/2 of Trump voters believe he should make his taxes public. And get this, Jim. This is not a good number for Donald Trump. Nearly 8 in 10, or rather, nearly 6 in 10 voters think that he is hiding something by not releasing them.
Finally, we've just learned, Jenna, from NORAD that Russian warplanes were sighted off the coast of California and Alaska on July 4th, probing U.S. defenses twice, forcing U.S. F-15s and F-22s to scramble as Americans celebrated Independence Day. At the same time, Russian President Vladimir Putin called President Obama to wish him a happy 4th. Jenna?
That's interesting. That's the first that we're hearing of this, Jennifer. So much of the focus was on ISIS going into the weekend, and we've talked so much about the heightened security alerts all over the country. So what do we know about what the Russian jets were up to?
Well, what we know, Jenna, is that these were Tupolev strategic bombers known as bear bombers. They're capable of carrying strategic weapons, nuclear weapons, and they probed off of Alaska about 10:30 a.m. Eastern and 11 a.m. Eastern off the coast of California. The U.S. Air Force scrambled F-15s and F-22s to meet them. However, they did not enter U.S. airspace, which is 12 nautical miles off the coast of the continental U.S. Jenna?
Certainly some more.
Making a big deal out of shaking hands and signing a deal to privatize air traffic control at airports around the world. This is sort of a conservative dream.
Barbara, let's start with you. What can you tell us about this latest incident, much closer to Alaska than the first incident involving these 2 Russian bombers that were intercepted by U.S. fighter jets?
Wolf, the second incident in 2 days, this time these Tu-95 Bear bombers flying within about 36 miles or so of the Alaskan coastline. Again, the U.S. military runs regular air patrols up there where they have long-range radars that watch for this sort of thing. They did not come into U.S. airspace, but they sent up U.S. aircraft in response, and they escorted them out of the area. The second incident in 2 days, and we hadn't seen Russian aircraft in that region for some time. They've been flying and being intercepted much further to the south. So the question is this the start of a new provocation campaign by the Russians, or are they just out there flying around, you know, essentially trying to ping the system, see what response they get from the U.S. military? U.S. military commanders noting all of this, not unduly concerned at this point, but just finding it all very curious and keeping an eye on the Russians. Wolf.
Making a big deal out of shaking hands and signing a deal to privatize air traffic control at airports around the world. This is sort of a conservative dream.
Officials say U.S. jets scrambled to intercept Russian bombers off California and Alaska coasts on July 4th.
Making a big deal out of shaking hands and signing a deal to privatize air traffic control at airports around the world. This is sort of a conservative dream.
This is an article on Fox News dated July 5th. While the United States celebrated Independence Day, two pairs of Russian bombers flew off the coast of California and Alaska, forcing the Air Force to scramble fighter jets to intercept both flights, said two senior defense officials.
Making a big deal out of shaking hands and signing a deal to privatize air traffic control at airports around the world. This is sort of a conservative dream.
The first incidents occurred at 10:30 on July 4th off the coast of Alaska. That's Eastern Time. The two U.S. Air Force F-22 jets were scrambled from their base in Alaska to intercept two Tupolev Tu-95 long-range strategic bombers, and they were capable of carrying nuclear weapons. The second incident occurred half an hour later at 11 a.m., also on July 4th, off the central coast of Florida, and those were intercepted by two F-15s. From an undisclosed location, they were scrambled to intercept that pair of Tu-95 Bear bombers.
Making a big deal out of shaking hands and signing a deal to privatize air traffic control at airports around the world. This is sort of a conservative dream.
A NORAD spokesman would not confirm if either pair of bombers was armed. At no time did either pair of the bombers, the Russian bombers, enter U.S. airspace, 12 nautical miles off the coast, according to one defense official. Neither official would reveal just how close the Russian bombers came to the U.S. shores. At the same time the bombers were in the air probing the west coast of the United States and Alaska, Russian President Vladimir Putin called President Obama to wish him a happy 4th of July, Independence Day celebration. A NORAD spokesman, Michael Kucherek, said, "These are not unprecedented flights, but we are postured to respond whether in Alaska or California. At no time did the bombers enter North American sovereign airspace." A similar incident took place on July 4th, 2013, 2 years ago. So I'll leave a link below for you for this article, Fox News, July 6th.
Not sure many people are aware of this, but while the United States celebrated Independence Day, two pairs of Russian bombers flew right off the coast of California and Alaska.
Making a big deal out of shaking hands and signing a deal to privatize air traffic control at airports around the world. This is sort of a conservative dream.
Now, this forced the Air Force to scramble fighter jets to intercept both flights. The first incident occurred around 10:30 a.m. on July 4th off the coast of Alaska. Two U.S. Air Force F-22 jets were scrambled from the base in Alaska to intercept these aircraft and run them out of the territory. They say the second incident occurred around 11 a.m., also on July 4th, around central California. Then two F-15s from an undisclosed location were scrambled to intercept another pair of Tu-95 Bear bombers.
Making a big deal out of shaking hands and signing a deal to privatize air traffic control at airports around the world. This is sort of a conservative dream.
NORAD would not confirm, they refused to confirm if either pair of the bombers was armed. They said at no time did they enter U.S. airspace, but they were just 12 nautical miles off the coast. Same time, kind of in your face, Vladimir Putin called Obama to wish him a happy 4th of July.
Making a big deal out of shaking hands and signing a deal to privatize air traffic control at airports around the world. This is sort of a conservative dream.
It's worth keeping track of the Russians and what they're doing here, skirting our coast once again. I'll leave a link with more info. It's been Dabu 7. Eyes to the skies.
As the West carefully watches Russian moves in the Ukraine crisis, an Air Force general sounding a warning about Russian military maneuvers.
He says Russia is ramping up its air activity over the Pacific Ocean, even making claims a U.S. fighter jet intercepted a Russian aircraft over Guam. KCAL 9 political reporter Dave Bryan is live at USC with the story for us. Dave?
Well, Lena, Sylvia, we talked to a Russian expert here just a short while ago. He works in the Center for International Studies. He says Russian President Vladimir Putin is now sort of poking the U.S., testing to see what the response will be militarily, but primarily economically.
Making a big deal out of shaking hands and signing a deal to privatize air traffic control at airports around the world. This is sort of a conservative dream.
But the news, nonetheless, must be very unsettling for many Californians.
General Hawk Carlyle.
When U.S. Air Force General Herbert Hawk Carlyle spoke this week in Washington, D.C., he delivered a chilling message for Californians. The Russians are coming.
What Russia is doing in Ukraine and Crimea has a direct effect on what's happening in Asia Pacific. Some of the things we've seen is their long-range aviation and the increase in that. Those areas depicted in green, they've come with their long-range aviation out to the coast of California. They circumnavigated Guam.
Making a big deal out of shaking hands and signing a deal to privatize air traffic control at airports around the world. This is sort of a conservative dream.
General Carlyle said the number of long-range Russian airborne patrols in the Pacific region included a Tupolev Tu-95 strategic bomber, which was intercepted over Guam by a U.S. F-15 fighter jet. And some of the Russian flights, he said, extended all the way to the California coastline. Professor Ben Graham at USC's Center for International Studies says he believes Russian leader Vladimir Putin is testing the United States. But he says it's a risky strategy.
If we have sort of some of these aggressive military sorties up the coast of California or something, the last thing you want is to actually have some 19-year-old Russian fighter pilots shoot down an American jet or something. You know, when you start playing these games, there's always the risk of someone going too far and provoking at a level you didn't intend.
The strategy may raise fears that Putin is determined to reestablish the old Soviet Union, which could spark another Cold War. But Professor Graham says that's unlikely because the Russia of 2014 is nowhere near as powerful as the Soviet Union was in the 1950s.
He's too weak to do that. I mean, the Cold War emerged between a very powerful Soviet Union and a powerful West, and now we have a powerful West and a not so powerful Russia. You know, there's an upper limit on how severe Putin can make this conflict before it sinks Russia economically.
And that's the vulnerability, the professor says, because Russia is vulnerable economically, and both Russia and the U.S. and the West are now testing one another to see how far they will go with economic sanctions and what impact that will have on Russia. We're live at USC. Dave Bryan, KCAL 9 News.
The largest missile arsenals in the world are Russia, China, and North Korea in that order, and most of them are pointed at either us or our friends and allies.
Does it bother you that Russian military jets are flying near the California coastline? Well, it has the U.S. military concerned and on guard. Good evening. I'm Ashley Ritchie.
And I'm Monty Torres. Thank you for joining us. If you think what's happening between Russia and Ukraine is a world away, you'd be mistaken. KMPH Fox 26 News reporter Eric Rosales did some digging and uncovered Russia's activity in the Pacific has increased dramatically.
The general in charge of U.S. Air Forces in the Pacific says U.S. military planes have had to engage and turn around planes just like this off the coast of California. They are long-range Russian bombers. Planes like this one, which are known as the Bear in the Sky because it's equipped with 4 turbine-powered engines and is considered one of the fastest bombers in the world.
What Russia is doing in Ukraine and Crimea has a direct effect on what's happening in Asia Pacific. Some of the things we've seen is their long-range aviation and the increase in that. Those areas depicted in green. They've come with their long-range aviation out to the coast of California. They circumnavigated Guam.
Speaking from a Washington, D.C. think tank, which was later placed on YouTube, General Herbert Hawk Carlyle says not only has there been a significant increase in Russian forces over the Pacific in the air, but also with its ships as well. The general believes the increased activity is a show of force, but also to gather intelligence. He and others say Russia's actions are not being taken lightly.
The largest missile arsenals in the world are Russia, China, and North Korea in that order, and most of them are pointed at either us or our friends and allies. And so our ability to defend against a potential missile attack is one that is hugely a challenge. And you can see that when you look at what North Korea does even today with respect to their growing missile arsenal.
All media calls about the Russian military planes invading U.S. airspace are being directed to the North American Aerospace Defense Command. Major Beth Smith, a NORAD spokesperson, told me NORAD has intercepted in excess of 50 Russian long-range bomber aircraft over the last 5 years in order to visually identify them. Now, the general did not give any details of the incidents, and neither would NORAD. However, someone is responding locally. In Fresno, we do have the 144th Fighter Wing with the California Air National Guard. That's right near the airport. And then we also have the Navy fighter jets down in Lemoore at Lemoore Naval Air Station. Monty, the general did add that the United States will continue to take these threats and challenges head on.
Making a big deal out of shaking hands and signing a deal to privatize air traffic control at airports around the world. This is sort of a conservative dream.
I have to tell you, Eric, it is alarming, and the military is not even releasing how close they got to the coastline or how many planes.
They are not. They're not releasing how close they were or how many planes, but you may recall, I think it was back in 2007 that Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, had said that he would continue his missions in NATO areas that was considered off limits when it was the Soviet Union.
Shades of the Cold War all over again.
Possibly.
All right, Eric. Well, the general ended his talk by saying, as the United States faces budgetary problems with the military, our relationship with ally countries needs to get closer. He says gaining a better understanding of their challenges will help protect us as well.
And that's because it's happening to them, too. The probing of U.S. defenses by Russian military aircraft off the coast of California is far from an isolated incident. If anything, Russia seems to be getting more aggressive. And less than 2 weeks before that, a Russian warplane made several close passes near the U.S. Navy destroyer, the USS Donald Cook, in the Black Sea near the coast of Ukraine. The Pentagon called it a provocative move occurring at a time of escalating tensions between Russia, Ukraine, and NATO.